So, yesterday, King Charles was officially crowned in the UK. This celebration is called the Coronation. So Queen Elizabeth had this. So, of course, King Charles is having this. I want to show you a few highlights from the coronation. And then I also want to discuss there's a split here. There is a divide in reference to the monarchy, and it is among the citizens of the UK. Some people relished in King Charles' coronation celebration, and then there are others who are not pleased about this, and they have opinions and criticisms of the monarchy that I think we all need to hear. But let's dive into those highlights first, just to give you a little tidbit, a little preview of what happened yesterday. And here you'll see here is King Charles and Camilla. Man, what a spectacle. I can't even show you all of the jokes that people made on social media yesterday about Camilla, so we're not even going to get into all of that. But basically, long story short, people were saying, oh, look, even the side chick can be crowned. And I do want to say really quickly, because I don't think everyone is aware of this, Camilla was actually dating Charles first. A lot of people don't know this. They think that he was dating Diana first. That is not true. He was with her first. He wanted to marry her, and the queen forbid it. And that is how he ended up with Diana. So he didn't actually want to marry her. This is just something to know. It was forbidden. Why? Because of her reputation. So let's go ahead and get into the highlights. So there were over 2,000 guests. I'm going to mute this part because there's a little bit of music coming up. There were over 2,000 guests, including heads of state, religious leaders, and family friends. Prince Harry walked in the Abbey just behind his uncle, Prince Andrew. And we're going to get into Prince Andrew as well. So there's Prince Harry, yada, yada. And everybody's walking in and all of that jazz. Westminster Abbey has been the site of the British coronation since 1066. Charles is the 40th monarch to be crowned there and the 10th since the 1776 U.S. Declaration of Independence. So, and here's King Charles walking down the aisle here. Now, this whole thing to me yesterday just seemed really cringe. This type of admiration and celebration over one person who actually, this isn't something that they fought to achieve. They were just given this opportunity by birth because they were born into a royal family. And we're going to talk about that as well. Like, what are the limitations here? Should the monarchy continue? And we need to also talk about the wealth that the royal family has and where that wealth came from. So we're going to do a little bit of history here as well today. So you can see here is where they are crowning him. They are also giving him the scepters. And if you go back to video footage of Queen Elizabeth during her coronation, similar process here. So he's going to give his little speech here. So now I can unmute it.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb.
This is so cringe to me. The kneeling, the bowing down. It's just, and I get it. It's a part of the culture, but I mean, it's his dad. So to me, it's just, this is so over the top to me. And this is one of the reasons why I think that the monarchy just needs to be abolished, because I don't feel like this is relevant in 2023. This idea of these royal families, the bowing, the kneeling, I just don't feel like that fits anymore in the society that we're in.
So help me God.
It's very odd. This is just weird to me. And it also seemed kind of awkward. So there's Camilla. So she is
May thy servant Camilla, who wears this crown, be filled by thine abundant grace.
So this part here, I'm just going to mute and we can skip through the song. See that part. And so here you'll see this is where he's starting to do his walk. I just couldn't get through this without laughing. Like seriously, yesterday I was watching some of the video footage on Twitter because I didn't want to sit down and actually watch this on national television. But it was laughable to me. Like I just don't. So there he is walking through. Why does Camilla get a crown? Because she's married to, they crown both of them. This is the king and the queen. So she's with Charles. So actually, I don't know if they're actually married yet, but she is with Charles. So that's how it works. And they're walking him out and they're singing there as he walks out. This all to me is just awkward and weird. He doesn't look comfortable. And then you'll see here's the exit. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, look at all of that stolen wealth. We'll get into that. All of that stolen wealth. And you get the idea. So we don't have to play the whole thing, but that was some of the highlights there from the coronation yesterday. Now, there were protesters that were at this event, and honestly, I don't blame them. They were chanting, "Not my king." And I showed a clip of this at the very beginning of the show. But you have to understand that people in the UK are divided over, now King Charles being crowned. You still have to remember that inflation is still rampant. There's a cost of living crisis in the UK. And so the people there are divided. And then there's also a generational divide that we need to talk about as well. Some of the younger people don't see the point of this anymore. You have to understand that they don't make laws. There is a prime minister in the UK. That's what the prime minister is for. There's a parliament. There's a prime minister. So for a lot of the younger people, they just don't understand the point of this. And they find themselves asking, like, why do we still have a monarchy during a time where people are struggling to pay their bills? There's a cost of living crisis in the UK, and our tax dollars are supporting their way of life. Because remember, during the winter, when residents in the UK couldn't afford to pay their heating bills, what you have to understand is they set up facilities called warm banks so people could go to those facilities to get heat. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace had heat. Buckingham Palace still had servants and maids and butlers. Their way of life did not change. And is that fair? Is it fair for the royal family to continue to live a lavish lifestyle during a time when the people in the UK are struggling financially because there is a cost of living crisis? And that is the question that some people have. So I want to go to this clip here where they discuss just that, the division among the residents in the UK. Listen to this.
With his country in the middle of a cost of living crisis, King Charles has promised a slimmed down coronation. There will be a shorter ceremony and fewer guests, but the cost will remain high, and the official figure remains a secret.
The coronation has been estimated to be costing between 50 and 100 million.
The coronation has been estimated costing between 50 and 100 million dollars. Is it necessary for them to continue this? Think about what that money could be put towards, right? There are homeless people in the UK. Why not take that 50 or 100 million dollars and try to start to eradicate homelessness in the UK instead? Why can't Charles and Camilla and all the rest of them just get jobs like everyone else in the UK? Why should they get to continue to live this life of luxury off of stolen wealth from other countries, other nations? Why? Let's go on. That's insane.
At the moment, that's just a guess. We don't know exactly how much it's going to cost.
Not my king! Not my king! Not my king!
And it's this use of public money and the secrecy around it that's got some of the king's subjects thinking revolutionary thoughts.
Not my king! Not my king!
We do not need a coronation. The Swedish king decided the coronations were out of date, and that was in like 1870. So, we are wasting huge amounts of money at a time when we have a cost of living crisis, when we can't afford enough police, can't afford enough nurses, can't afford enough teachers, and it is a disgrace.
But we can afford to pay for this ridiculous celebration for King Charles. And he is 100% spot on there.
I think the king, the current king and the royal family as such do make a massive contribution to this country. How many people actually come to London and love this place and the money they spend here? We should be really thankful to the royal family.
Morecambe in Lancashire is one of the places that's been hardest hit by the cost of living crisis.
Morecambe is kind of boom and bust town. The cost of living crisis is getting more and more obvious in the way people present, in how people behave, and the kind of lives that they're leading. We've got the lowest life expectancy in the Northwest. Can't use the electric, can't get on the phone, can't book a doctor's appointment.
Chris Kravietz has set up a food pantry in his local church to help the community.
They have to set up food pantries, but yet the king and the queen, like all these people, Andrew, Harry, even though he lives in the US, he still comes back to participate in these activities. William, Kate, all of them get to live in wealth. And you have people in the UK that have to rely on food pantries just so they can eat. This is a problem. A massive redistribution of wealth in the UK is needed at this point in time. And I don't care if it was tradition. Some traditions need to go away. And it's okay for that to happen. You don't have to continue something just because it is tradition. At this point in time, you need to ask yourself, what is the point of continuing to have a monarchy in the UK at this point in time? I can't think of one.
I found that using the pantry has been like a lifesaver, really.
Even small business owners like Lauren Woodfine are struggling.
Our energy bills have gone up like ridiculous amounts, like almost triple. So we've been using hot water bottles to keep our clients warm. I think loads of people are struggling.
Lauren thinks the coronation is a waste of money.
In a time where we can't feed and house our people, I don't really agree on the fact that they're spending so much money for a family that's so wealthy. It's just becoming a king. Like, it's just put your hat on, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, yay! Oh, yay!
But Morecambe also has its fair share of monarchists.
God save the king! We're trying to break the Guinness Book of Records for the biggest street party. It'll be a huge turnout, a huge celebration. So what are you guys doing on the Sunday? Are you working?
Yes, we'll be here working, helping out.
Now, these are the ones who still agree with the monarchy and still want the monarchy to stay. And it's just like there are some people who do live for this. There are some people who they love the royal family. But, at what point? At what point? And I feel like, particularly our society, it's like we have to have someone to celebritize. You have to have someone to idolize, to look towards. And so for some people in the UK, the royal family is that image, and they want them to maintain having the monarchy because of that. But for what? How does this help you? How does this benefit you in what way, shape, or form? How? Just so you can have someone to fawn over? Never understood this.
Cost of living is absolutely dreadful for everybody. But I just think this is a huge historical event. Possibly a lot of us will never see this ever happen again. I think what it will bring to the country outweighs the cost.
He just told you what it will bring to the country outweighs the cost. What is it bringing to the country? What is it bringing to the country if people are struggling to buy food? What does it bring to the country if people are struggling to pay their bills? You have a cost of living crisis. And you really believe that this celebration of putting a crown on a man's head, who, by the way, didn't work for it, so to speak, it was just handed down to him because he was born into it. You really believe that this outweighs the cost of people struggling to pay for food, people struggling to pay their bills. That does not make any sense. This is part of the celebrity culture of the royal family. Now, as I mentioned, there were protesters there at the event, and they're not sorry. They are not sorry for what they have said at this coronation. Listen to this.
Why should we arrange our entire constitution just because American tourists like to have a selfie outside Buckingham Palace?
We haven't ruined anybody's day. We've just been quietly here. We've just been having a lovely, quiet sort of gathering here. We've done our chants. They've tried to do a few chants. I think it's all part of the fun. If you think about it, it's a proper British day out, you know, with a bit of banter.
I think this coronation is a disgusting waste of an estimated £250 million. The royal family sits at the top of a pyramid of inequality in this country. There's classism and snobbery in this country, and it's because of them.
She said they sit at the top of the pyramid. How is this any different from the billionaires and other oligarchs that we have? It isn't really. Remember, this whole idea of trickle-down economics was proven incorrect. It does not work. Ronald Reagan tried to get people to believe that. People did believe it, but we found out it doesn't work. So what you have ideally are people sitting at the top of that pyramid, some because they had a business and their business got them there. But when it comes to the royal family, their business didn't get them there. They are there, number one, because they stole wealth from other nations. And then everyone else that came after that was just born into the family. So they just get this handed to them. There needs to be a call, seriously, for those of you that live in the UK, of a massive redistribution of wealth in reference to the monarchy. It is not fair that you have one person, one family sitting at the top of the pyramid and everybody else is at the bottom, literally at the bottom. And it is the people at the bottom, it's their taxpayer dollars that are supporting and that are holding that family up at the top of that pyramid. Without those people, without the residents in the UK, you don't have the tax dollars to support the family. This is a reality of the situation. And what are they getting out of it? Nothing.
Very, very top.
I'm here to exercise my democratic right, and since I'm paying approximately £5 for this coronation today, I feel I've got just as much right to come here as the royalists who have paid their £5.
I don't think that it does the country a great service. I don't think he is hardworking. I don't think that it's a good way that the country gets reflected around the world. I don't believe in people who aren't elected having positions of power, especially privileged people.
I believe in democracy, and monarchy is by its very nature undemocratic.
It is very undemocratic. Remember, they're not elected. He brought up a really good point here, right? The prime minister is elected. The king or the queen is not elected. They are just there just because they were born into it. And just because they were born into the family, they get to live this bougie lifestyle just because. Just because. Off of the backs of the working class people in the UK. How is that still fair? At this day in time, in 2023, make it make sense. Now, some people will say they need to be there because of tourism. I say, find something else in London to go look at. If the only reason you're keeping them there is because it helps tourism, then that says something to me. You mean to tell me there's nothing else that people in London can go visit? I beg to differ. London has history. The UK has history that goes beyond the royal family. But if that is the response, that's the reason as to why they keep them there, that is very, very sad. Very sad.
I believe in equality, and inequality is a huge problem in this country at the moment, and they epitomise inequality.
We're told the idea that everybody loves the royal family and that we all sort of enjoy the feudalistic aspect of bowing down to people, and it's just so not true. Most people are indifferent, and a few of us actually feel it's important to come out and say, right, I'm against the monarchy. As people, it's nothing to do with them personally. The whole idea that we've got this institution that corrupts the whole country. If you look at it carefully, we've got a system of landed gentry clawing in wealth after wealth. The Duke of Westminster, 9 billion a year, and they pay no tax on it. It's just an unfair society, and this is just the pinnacle of it. So
they pay no taxes on it. No taxes on the land. None of it. None of it. I like the fact that she explained to people that, I guess more so people that don't live in the UK, have this impression that everybody in the UK just loves the royal family. Notice she told you that's not true. And people came out in the rain. The protesters, they're out in the rain. And also the people who came to cheer them on are out in the rain. A passionate issue for people.
So what we need to do is to challenge that narrative that it's okay to have dukes and lords that we're supposed to bow down to, that are creaming in the wealth. They don't have to go to food banks. They go to food banks for photo opportunities. People in this country are going to food banks because they can't afford to eat.
What are your thoughts on the people out protesting?
That part right there. They go to food banks. You see the royal family, they go to like these charity events. They go to like food banks. They go to visit orphanages. They take pictures. They give a little speech, and then they go right back to Buckingham Palace to their life that remains the same. Whereas the people who actually need the food and need those services living in the UK, they don't get to go back to a palace. They rely on those food pantries. For them, that's their life. That's their everyday life. So they're not apologizing for it at all. And I don't blame them.
Here. I just think to see these people out today is a real shame because, the amount the monarchy do, the amount of tourism, capital they bring in for the country, to see these people showing such, the press against the monarchy, really, it's not good to see.
You see what I just told you? That's the only reason they think they should be there is because of the tourism. He just proved my point. The amount of tourism that they bring into the country. That's sad. That's sad. You know how many countries don't have a king or a queen or royal family? And they get plenty of tourism. So he just wants to keep them around. Look at the amount of capital that they bring into the country. It's all about money. Also, the same amount of capital, all that capital that's brought into the country, and you still have people starving there. Where's that money going? That's all it's about. You see, the focus is just right back onto money. All the money that they bring in. How dare these people? How dare them? Now, some of the protesters were arrested, as you can imagine. This one here, Patrick Thelwell, he was arrested. Today, I was arrested at the Coronation on suspicion of carrying eggs. I was identified by a facial recognition camera and snatched from the protest in handcuffs so tightly they cut my skin. For the second time, I was dragged through a crowd of monarchists baying for my blood. Listen to this.
This fascism! I'm arrested just for being here! What am
That happened So he was one of the people that was arrested. There were others, but his was actually caught on camera. He also came back and gave us an update and said, I was searched, and when they found nothing, was released after half an hour. The police had to escort me back through the monarchist crowds because so many people were assaulting me. So there was a firefight. Now, I want you to see this clip here as well, because this was right before the protest happened. And this is some of the people who were getting ready for it and explaining like why they decided to come out to do this.
Down with the monarchy. A federal republic is what we need.
As Britain prepares for its first coronation since 1953.
A new monarch, a different flag. Britain is buzzing with all things coronation.
The state of the monarchy has come into renewed focus. With this focus, an opportunity for Republicans to convert more people to their constitutional cause.
Hello, would you vote for Charles? Would you vote for Charles?
Pollsters point to a growing generational divide, with young people increasingly likely to harbour Republican views.
Just nobody needs these people, and we're literally burning money that we don't have and can't afford to throw away.
Nobody needs these people. They're not needed. Burning money that we can't afford to throw away. Now, there was another thing that stood out to me because, Andrew was there. He was present, of course. And someone pointed something out, and I think this is very important to mention. This is from Vision for the Blind. Prince Andrew sexually abused underage girls, was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, yet here he is in full regalia at his brother's coronation. These people are truly sick. And this is the other part of the problem. No accountability for the royal family. The fact that Prince Andrew was even allowed to be there in full regalia, it should give you pause. The fact that Prince Andrew is not behind bars right now, but the protester who was just in the crowd saying, "Not my king," was arrested, that should give you pause. This is another problem with these types of institutions. Because they have so much power, because they have so much wealth, that again, that they stole, they are not held accountable. They should be ashamed, should be ashamed. But how did this even come to be? How is it that the royal family were able to obtain as much wealth as they have now anyway? Because as you can imagine, it wasn't theirs. Let's get into a little bit of the history. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and hit that like button, guys. That helps me with the algo. But we need to get into this. We need to talk about the history of the royal family and how they stole wealth from other nations. Listen to this.
From the 16th century onwards, the British monarchy was central to the establishment, expansion, and maintenance of the British Empire, the largest the world has ever seen. One of the ways they amassed wealth and power was through the transatlantic slave trade.
Bingo. Bingo. And a lot of people, they don't like to talk about it. Some people don't want to hear about this, but this is the fact. This is not my opinion. This is not what I want to be true. This is the fact if you follow the history. It wasn't theirs. Let's go on.
Of which the royals were largely in favor. The 1562 journey of John Hawkins, the first English person known to have included enslaved Africans in his cargo, was approved by Queen Elizabeth I herself. After Britain invaded Jamaica in 1655, the Royal African Company was set up by royal charter under King Charles II. Its purpose was to control the West African slave trade and protect the British monopoly against the Dutch. The RAC went on to transport more enslaved Africans to the Americas than any other single institution ever, lining the pockets of the Stuart monarchs.
That piece right there is incredibly crucial for people to understand. when you compare them to other nations.
And protect the British monopoly against the Dutch. The RAC went on to transport more enslaved Africans to the Americas than any other single institution ever.
More than any other single institution ever.
Lining the pockets of the Stuart monarchs. Many of those trafficked were branded with the initials DY, as in the Duke of York, who led the company and later became King James II. Britain's shameful history of slavery is inextricable from the royals who were so eager to profit from it, and that barbaric legacy extends today. Historic royal residences like Kensington Palace and Hampton Court Palace that date back to the 17th century were, to some extent, funded by slavery.
There you go. Even their residences. It dates all the way back. So for people who think, oh, well, those properties didn't exist during that time. Yes, they did. And this is why some other countries have called on the royal family to pay their country reparations for this. Let's go on.
So while it's hard to tell just how much of the Windsors' wealth derives from slavery today, it quite literally helped to build the roofs over their heads. And these days, it's the British taxpayers who are footing the maintenance bill. In 2014, they paid $7.6 million to refurbish a 20-room apartment for Will and Kate in Kensington Palace.
Will and Kate's apartment, $7.6 million just to refurbish it. The physical structure already existed, but to refurbish it, $7.6 million, that money came from taxpayers. The same taxpayers who were struggling to pay for food. How is that okay? That's not. Will and Kate can get jobs. They can do that. Some people don't want to hear this because they like the royal family. Bump that. Will and Kate can go get jobs and be like everybody else in the UK.
During Queen Victoria's reign, the Slavery Compensation Act meant a £20 million payout. £17 billion in today's money was paid out to slave owners, not the people who had been enslaved or the countries they were taken from.
Bingo. When they did do payouts, that money went to slave owners, not to slaves or to the countries the slaves were taken from. Everybody needs to know this. Share this with your friends, especially those that are, obsessed and that love the royal family.
It represented at the time 40% of the Treasury's annual spending budget. The sum was so large that it took British taxpayers 182 years to pay off.
In recent years, more and more former colonies are saying they want out of the Commonwealth and an apology. And while they're at it, their rightful share of those billions, maybe even trillions, is complex to calculate, but some estimated figures for reparations suggest that the UK owes a staggering amount of money, around $10 trillion to the Caribbean and to Africa each. And
each. Trillion, not million or billion.
$44.6 trillion to India. It's enough to make you sweat, unless, of course, you're Prince Andrew.
There you go.
Ahead of the couple touching down here, there have been protests which have cast a distinct shadow over this.
This is when Kate and William, they went to visit, I believe it was either Barbados or the Bahamas, and they were greeted with residents there saying, yeah, your family needs to pay us back. Trillions of dollars. And I'm glad she mentioned India too, because a lot of times people will forget that, but also they took wealth from India as well.
Visit.
Earlier this year, Will and Kate were embarrassed on their tour of the Caribbean, and not just because of Will's bad dancing. Before their arrival in Jamaica, over 100 public figures signed an open letter calling on the royal family and the British government to offer an apology and pay reparations. Prince William did express profound sorrow for the appalling atrocities of slavery.
But Prince William didn't cut any checks. And this is another thing too, in reference to Jamaica. A lot of people say, well, Jamaica is a poor country. Maybe it would not have been if their wealth wasn't stolen from them. Will can say he's sorry, but I don't see any checks.
But that's not actually an apology or a payout.
Prince William
I hope you feel ashamed in some sense.
They represent a certain kind of history that is unpleasant for our people.
Yep. So you can see why so many people around the world view the Queen's death as an opportunity to right historic wrongs. What remains to be seen is whether the new king will be open to reparations, but it's unlikely they'll come at a cost to him and his family.
Which means most likely no, because that would mean that they would have to change their lifestyle. That's just the reality of it. And they are very comfortable, very comfortable. Now, JB tweeted this, and I thought this was important. Trying to take down the system that perpetuated imperialism and colonialism seems more noble to me than some dude in a crown who is king just because his mommy was queen, just because her daddy was king, just because. And that's how it works. Will there be a change? Do you think there will be any type of change in the future? We'll have to wait and see. I'll go ahead and take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Reaganomics trickle-down theory was based on the assumption that if you give the financial benefits to the boss class, then they will be so gracious to give it to their workers. That, of course, they underestimated the greed of the boss class. Also, if they want tourism to continue and they want to have a kingdom, then call Disney. They give you a magic kingdom, tourism maintained, problem solved. I love that. I love that. Love it, love it, love it. JR Jr. Sabby, did you write? Oh, I did that one. Sorry. Danny, Camilla was the first main squeeze. Yes, he was with Camilla first. A lot of people don't realize this, but Charles was dating her first, and the Queen said he could not marry her because of her reputation. That's right. So a lot of people just see her. They're like, she's the side chick, but that was his girlfriend. That was the person he wanted to marry. This isn't the first time this has happened in their family. It's happened a couple of times where people of the royal family wanted to marry someone they were actually in love with, and the Queen stepped in and said no. She also said this to her own sister, Margaret. She wouldn't allow Margaret to marry the guy she was in love with because he was divorced. Apparently that was a no-no back then. And here we are.